The mining facility was dead silent. Minho walked through the dark corridors with his flashlight, looking for anything valuable to salvage. This place had been abandoned for 3 years, ever since the war started. Most salvagers avoided it because it was too close to enemy space. But Minho needed the money. His boots crunched on broken glass as he entered what looked like a research lab. Computers were smashed, papers scattered everywhere, and equipment torn from the walls. Someone had left in a hurry. Minho sighed and kept moving deeper into the facility. That's when he heard it. A small sound, almost like a whimper. Minho froze. His hand moved to the plasma cutter on his belt. The facility was supposed to be empty. He listened carefully and heard it again, coming from behind a sealed door at the end of the hall. The door had alien writing on it, the same symbols the Valkyrie Empire used. He should leave. Everyone knew what the Valkyrie were. They were the enemy. 9 feet tall, covered in black scales, with claws that could tear through metal. They were born warriors, bred for combat, and they had killed millions of humans during the war. But that sound, it didn't sound like a warrior. It sounded like something small and scared. Minho used his tools to force the door open. Cold air rushed out, making him shiver. Inside was a cryo storage room with 6 pods lined up against the wall. Each pod had a small window, and inside each one was a creature that made Minho's breath catch in his throat. They were Valkyrie, but they were children. Cubs. The biggest one was maybe the size of a human 6-year-old. They were curled up in the pods, their eyes closed, their small bodies shaking even in cryo sleep. Minho checked the computer terminal next to the pods. It took him a while to translate the Valkyrie text, but when he did, his stomach turned. These cubs had been marked as defective, too small, too weak, wrong scale density. In Valkyrie culture, the weak were not tolerated. The research notes said they were scheduled for termination, but the facility was evacuated before the order could be carried out. They had been left here to die. Minho stared at the sleeping cubs. He should walk away. If anyone found out he helped enemy aliens, he would go to prison. His salvaging license would be revoked. His life would be over. But when he looked at those small, shaking forms, his hand moved to the control panel before he could stop himself. One by one, he started the wake-up sequence for each pod. It would take 30 minutes for them to fully revive. Minho used that time to prepare his ship, clearing out the cargo hold and setting up makeshift beds. When he returned, the first cub was awake. She was standing in her pod, her golden eyes wide with fear. She was black, scaled with hints of blue, and she was small enough that Minho could probably carry her. When she saw him, she hissed and pressed herself against the back of the pod. The other cubs began waking up too. One male with a broken tail tried to charge at Minho but collapsed, too weak to stand. The smallest one just curled into a ball and made a crying sound that broke Minho's heart. Minho sat down on the floor, making himself smaller and less threatening. He spoke softly in the basic trade language that most species understood. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to help." The first cub, the female with the golden eyes, tilted her head. She said something in Valkyrie that Minho didn't understand, but her tone was questioning. "My name is Minho. I'm a human. Do you understand me?" The female cub nodded slowly. She pointed to herself and said something that sounded like a growl. Minho decided to call her Kira. He had no idea what her real name was, and she probably didn't have one. Defective Valkyrie weren't given names in their culture. Over the next hour, Minho carefully coaxed the cubs out of their pods. They were starving, dehydrated, and terrified. He gave them water first, then some of the nutrition bars from his ship. They ate like they hadn't seen food in weeks, which they probably hadn't. There were 6 of them in total. Kira, the cautious female. Rax, the aggressive male with the broken tail. Tali, the smallest one who never stopped eating once she started. Ven, a male who just watched everything in silence. Sora, a female with a scarred eye. And Zek, the tiny runt, who could barely walk without stumbling. Minho named them after his old squadron, the friends he had lost in the war. It felt right somehow. Getting them onto his ship was hard. They were scared of everything, especially the ship's engines. But Kira seemed to trust Minho just a little, and she helped calm the others. By the time they were in space, all 6 cubs were huddled together in the cargo hold, wrapped in thermal blankets. Minho sat in the pilot's chair and stared at the navigation screen. He couldn't take them to any official port. The authorities would take them away, probably kill them. He needed somewhere safe, somewhere off the records. He set a course for New Haven, the farming world where his sister Gina lived. It was remote, mostly ignored by both sides of the war. If anywhere would accept 6 Velkari cubs, it would be there. As the ship entered hyperspace, Minho looked back at the cargo hold. The cubs were sleeping now, piled on top of each other for warmth. They looked so small and helpless. How could anyone just throw them away? He didn't know how to raise alien predators. He didn't know if they would ever trust him. He didn't even know if what he was doing was right. But he knew one thing for certain. No child, human or alien, deserved to be abandoned. The journey to New Haven would take 3 days. 3 days to figure out what to do next. 3 days to wonder if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Behind him, in the cargo hold, Kira opened one golden eye and watched the human who had saved them. She didn't understand why, but she would remember this moment forever. Gina screamed when she saw the cubs. Minho couldn't blame her. 6 juvenile Velkari were standing in her barn, hissing and snarling at everything that moved. Tali had already broken a crate trying to get to the stored grain, and Rax was showing his teeth at anyone who came close. "Are you insane?" Gina grabbed Minho's arm and pulled him outside. "Those are Velkari, the same species that killed Mom and Dad. They're children," Minho said quietly. "Someone left them to die. They're predators. When they grow up, they'll be 9 feet tall and able to rip us apart. Only if we teach them to." Gina stared at her brother like he had lost his mind. Maybe he had. But when she looked back at the barn and saw little Zek stumbling on weak legs, trying to follow the others, something in her expression changed. 3 months, she finally said. "You have 3 months to prove this can work. If they're dangerous, they have to go." Minho hugged his sister. "Thank you." The first week was hell. The cubs refused to eat the food Minho prepared. They bit him when he tried to examine them. They fought with each other constantly. Ven broke Minho's water purifier. Sora scratched Gina's arm when she got too close. Zek cried all night, keeping everyone awake. Minho researched everything he could about Velkari. Their culture was based on strength and dominance. Adults beat their young to teach them. Weakness was punished with violence. The strong survived, and the weak died. It was how their empire had always worked. But Minho wasn't Velkari. He was human. And humans raised their children differently. He started with routine. Every morning at sunrise, he came to the barn. He brought food and water. He spoke softly to them. Even when they hissed at him, he never hit them, never yelled, never showed anger. Just patience. On the 8th day, Tali took food from his hand. She was always hungry, and eventually hunger won over fear. Minho praised her gently and gave her more. The other cubs watched carefully. Kira was next. She was smart, smarter than the others. She understood that Minho meant no harm. She started eating from his hand on day 10. And something amazing happened. She began making sounds to the other cubs, teaching them that the human was safe. Slowly, very slowly, the others followed. Rax took the longest. He was aggressive because he was scared, protecting himself the only way he knew. But when Minho sat with him for hours, not pushing, just being present, Rax eventually gave in. Minho created a schedule. Morning exercise in the fields. Breakfast. Learning time where he taught them basic human language through pictures and games. Lunch. Afternoon training where they could run and play. Dinner. Evening stories where Minho told them tales of brave humans who protected the weak. He brought in his friend Unji, a former combat medic. She was nervous around the cubs at first, but she taught them about medicine and healing. She showed them how bodies worked, both human and Velkari. The cubs were fascinated, especially Zek, who absorbed information like a sponge. Woojin, the local martial arts teacher, agreed to help after much convincing. He watched the cubs move and understood something important. They were predators, yes. But they were young predators who didn't know their own bodies. He designed exercises that built their strength without encouraging violence. The breakthrough came in the 3rd month, right before Gina's deadline. The cubs were playing near the river when Tali fell in. The current was strong, and she couldn't swim. She thrashed in the water, her small body pulled downstream. Minho ran toward the river, but Zek was closer. The smallest cub, the runt, who could barely keep up with his siblings, jumped into the water without hesitation. He grabbed Tali and held her above the surface, his weak legs kicking desperately. Minho pulled them both out. They were coughing and shaking, but alive. He wrapped them in blankets and held them close. "You saved her," Minho told Zek. "You were so brave." That night, he gathered all 6 cubs together and told them a story. It was about warriors who protected each other, who valued courage over strength, who measured greatness by who they saved instead of who they defeated. Kira translated his words for the others. When he finished, she looked at him with those golden eyes and asked a question in broken human language. "Why? You save us?" Minho thought for a long moment. "Because strength isn't just about being big or fierce. Real strength is choosing to protect those who can't protect themselves. Your people said you were weak. They were wrong. You're strong in ways they'll never understand." From that day forward, everything changed. The cubs didn't just accept Minho's training. They embraced it. They learned that teamwork made them stronger. They discovered that strategy could beat raw power. They understood that protecting each other wasn't weakness. It was the highest form of strength. Gina watched them grow and train. She saw how Kira became a tactical thinker, how Rax channeled his aggression into protection, how Tali used her speed, how Ven observed and learned, how Sora adapted despite her damaged eye, how Zek became their clever problem solver. One evening, she found Minho watching the cubs play in the field. They were practicing the team exercises Woojin had taught them, moving like a single unit. "You were right," Gina admitted. "They're not monsters. They're just kids." "They're our kids now," Minho said. 3 years passed. The cubs grew into adolescents. They weren't as big as normal Velkari adults, and they never would be. But they were fast, smart, and most importantly, they fought together. They knew human language, human tactics, and human values. Minho had turned 6 abandoned cubs into something their empire never expected. Not just warriors, but warriors with hearts. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humans decided to raise the rejected children of their enemies. Kira moved through the training course like water flowing downhill. She was 16 now by human counting. Still small for a Velkari, but strong in ways that mattered more. Behind her, Ven followed in complete silence, his dark scales making him nearly invisible in the shadows. Tali raced ahead, her speed unmatched by any of her siblings. Rax guarded the rear, his broken tail now a badge of honor rather than shame. Sora watched from high ground, her one good eye seeing more than most people saw with 2. Zek coordinated everything from the command center, his clever mind turning information into strategy. They completed the exercise in record time. Minho watched from the observation post and smiled. His cubs had become something extraordinary. "They're ready," Woojin said beside him. "Better than ready. I've trained Special Forces soldiers who weren't this coordinated." "They've had good teachers," Minho replied. Unji joined them, carrying her medical scanner. "I just finished their health checks. They're all in perfect condition." different from standard Valkyrie physiology, but perfect for their own unique builds. Minho climbed down from the post and met the cubs in the training yard. They gathered around him, no longer the scared, hissing creatures from 3 years ago. They were confident, capable. "You did well today," Minho told them. "But remember, completing the course isn't the goal. Taking care of each other is." "We know, Father," Kira said. She had started calling him that a year ago, and the others followed. Minho never corrected them. In every way that mattered, he was their father. That evening, as they sat together for dinner, Minho's communication device beeped. It was his old military contact, Captain Do-hyun. The message was marked urgent. Minho excused himself and took the call privately. Do-hyun's face appeared on the screen, and he looked worried. "Minho, we've detected Valkyrie scout ships entering your sector. They're not regular military. They're from the Imperial Genetic Purity Division." Minho's blood ran cold. "What do they want?" "According to intercepted communications, they're hunting for genetic defects. Cubs that were supposed to be terminated but somehow survived. They've traced signals from that old research facility you salvaged 3 years ago." "How long do I have?" 3 days, maybe 4. "Minho, you need to run. Take those cubs and disappear into deep space. These aren't regular soldiers. They're fanatics. They believe any Valkyrie who doesn't meet their standards must be eliminated to keep the bloodline pure." After the call ended, Minho sat in silence. He could run, pack up the cubs, take his ship, and vanish into the outer colonies. They could spend their lives hiding, always looking over their shoulders. Or they could stand and fight. When he returned to the house, all 6 cubs were waiting. They had heard enough to know something was wrong. "Tell us," Kira said simply. Minho explained everything. The scout ships, the Purity Division, what they wanted. When he finished, he looked at each of them. "We can leave. Run away and hide. Or we can stay and defend our home. It's your choice. You're not children anymore." Rax spoke first. "Running is logical. We're outnumbered. But logic isn't everything you taught us. You also taught us to protect what matters. New Haven is our home," Tali added. "The people here accepted us when no one else would." Ven, who rarely spoke, nodded firmly. Sora checked her rifle, already making preparations. Zek was already pulling up tactical maps on his datapad. Kira looked at Minho with those golden eyes that had first stared at him in fear 3 years ago. Now, they held determination and fire. "You saved us when we were helpless," she said. "Now we're strong enough to save others. We stay. We fight." The next 3 days were a blur of preparation. Minho contacted everyone in the colony and explained the situation. To his surprise, most chose to stay and help. These farmers had watched the cubs grow up. They had seen 6 terrified children become honorable young warriors. They weren't going to abandon them now. Woojin trained the colonists in basic combat. Unji set up medical stations throughout the settlement. Gina organized the civilians and created evacuation routes for those who couldn't fight. The cubs worked with Minho on strategy. They studied the terrain, set up defensive positions, and created traps throughout the colony. This was their home, and they knew every inch of it. On the 3rd night, Minho found Kira standing alone, looking at the stars. He joined her in silence. "Why did you really save us?" she asked. "Don't say it was because we're children. You could have saved human children instead." Minho considered his answer carefully. "When I was young, I was alone. My parents died in the war, and no one wanted to adopt a kid with scars and nightmares. I grew up angry, wondering why no one chose me. When I found you 6, I saw that same abandonment. I couldn't save myself back then, but I could save you. I wanted you to know that someone chose you, that you mattered." Kira was quiet for a long moment. Then, she did something she had never done before. She lowered her head and touched her forehead to Minho's shoulder. It was a Velkari gesture of deep respect, usually reserved for honored family. We choose you too, father. And tomorrow, we'll show the Empire what their rejected cubs have become. The next morning, sensors detected the approaching ships. 30 Velkari warriors descended on New Haven, led by Commander Thakran, a massive veteran of the Purity Division. His voice boomed across the colony's communication system. Surrender the genetic defects. Do this, and your colony will be spared. Minho stood in the center of the colony with his 6 cubs beside him. He activated his transmitter so everyone could hear his response. These cubs are under my protection. If you want them, you'll have to come through me. Thakran's laugh was cruel. A human and 6 runts against 30 elite warriors? You've signed your death warrant. Minho smiled and looked at his cubs. They smiled back, predatory and confident. We'll see about that, Minho said. The battle for New Haven was about to begin. The Velkari warriors landed at dawn, their black armor gleaming in the rising sun. They were massive, each one standing over 9 feet tall, with scales thick as tank plating. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never lost a fight. Commander Thakran led them forward, expecting easy victory. What he found instead was an empty colony square. No defenders in sight. No targets to attack. Just silence and abandoned buildings. Cowards are hiding, Thakran growled to his warriors. Spread out, find them, kill anyone who resists. That was exactly what Minho had hoped he would say. The moment the Velkari split into smaller groups, the trap began. Ven struck first. He had been waiting in the shadows of the grain storage building, completely invisible in his dark armor. When 3 warriors passed beneath him, he dropped down and slashed through their communication equipment before vanishing into the smoke grenades Zek had placed strategically throughout the colony. The warriors roared in confusion. They couldn't coordinate without their comms. They were fighting blind. Tali hit next. She burst from an alley at full speed, firing her plasma rifle at a group of 4 warriors. They turned to chase her, which was her plan. She led them straight into a trap where Rax was waiting. The big male crashed into them from the side, using momentum and surprise, rather than trying to match their strength directly. While they were off balance, colonist fighters in the buildings above dropped nets and stun grenades. Sora provided overwatch from the water tower, her one good eye pressed to her rifle scope. Unji had helped her design a special targeting system that compensated for her blind side. When a group of warriors tried to flank Minho's position, Sora's precise shots forced them into cover, buying time for the colonists to reposition. Zek was everywhere and nowhere. He had hacked into the colony's systems and was feeding information to everyone through their earpieces. He knew where every enemy warrior was, where they were going, and what they were trying to do. He turned the battle into a chess game, and the cubs were winning. But Commander Thakran was not a fool. He realized quickly what was happening. These weren't regular defenders. This was coordinated, professional, tactical warfare. He gathered his remaining 20 warriors and pushed straight toward the center of the colony where Minho and Kira were directing the defense. Enough games, Thakran roared. Face me directly, human coward. Minho stepped into the open. Kira was beside him, with Rax moving to join them. The 3 stood alone against 20 elite warriors. You call yourselves Velkari? Thakran laughed. You're pathetic. Small. Weak. Defective. You should have died in that facility. We're exactly what you made us. Kira replied in perfect Velkari. You taught us that weakness must be purged, but you never understood what real weakness is. Enlighten me, Runt. Real weakness is needing to hurt others to feel strong. Thakran charged. Rax met him head-on, not in a test of pure strength but with precise technique. Wujin had taught them well. Rax ducked under Thakran's massive claws and struck at weak points in the armor joints. When Thakran swung again, Rax wasn't there. He was moving, flowing, using the commander's own momentum against him. The other warriors tried to help their commander, but that's when Tali and Ven hit them from two sides. The battle became chaos. The cubs fought as a perfect unit, covering each other, switching positions seamlessly, never fighting alone. A warrior grabbed Zek, lifting the small Velkari by his throat. Zek couldn't match the warrior's strength, so he didn't try. Instead, he pulled a device from his belt and pressed it to the warrior's armor. Electric pulse. The warrior's systems overloaded, and he dropped Zek, who rolled away to safety where Sora provided covering fire. Minho fought alongside them with plasma rifle and tactical experience. He wasn't as strong or fast as the Valkyrie, but he had 40 years of combat knowledge. He placed his shots carefully, aimed for vulnerabilities, and most importantly, he protected his cubs when they needed it. The tide of battle turned when Rax finally gained the upper hand against Thakron. The commander was stronger, bigger, more experienced. But Rax had something Thakron didn't. He had siblings who watched his back. When Thakron tried to kill Rax with a devastating blow, Kira was there, with her shock baton. When another warrior tried to stab Rax from behind, Tali tackled him. When Thakron tried to retreat and regroup, Ven cut off his escape. When the commander tried to call for air support, Zek had already jammed their communications. Rax stood over the fallen commander, breathing hard. You measure strength by size. My father taught me, it's measured by who you protect. Thakron looked up at the small Velkari he had come to kill. Behind Rax stood 5 more cubs, all of them smaller than normal, all of them defective by Imperial standards, and beside them stood a single human who had taught them to be warriors. Impossible, Thakron whispered. We are the elite. We are perfect. You're alone, Kira said simply. We're family. That's why you lost. The remaining Velkari warriors saw their commander defeated and their numbers cut in half. They retreated to their ships and fled the system, carrying news that would shake the Empire. The defective cubs had become dangerous, but the victory came at a cost. 3 colonists had died defending their home. 12 more were injured. Part of the colony was burning, and Zek had taken a claw strike, protecting children in the evacuation center. He lay on the ground, breathing shallow, green blood pooling beneath him. Minho dropped beside him, his hands already working with medical supplies. Unji was there instantly, her scanner moving over Zek's small body. Stay with us, Minho begged. You hear me, Zek? You stay with us. The small Velkari opened his eyes. Yes, you won. You all won. Good. Zek's eyes started to close. No. You don't get to leave us. I didn't save you 3 years ago. Just to lose you now. Unji worked frantically, her medical training pushed to its limits. The other cubs gathered around their smallest sibling, their faces showing fear for the first time since the battle started. For long minutes, nobody spoke. The only sound was Unji's equipment and Minho's quiet prayers. Then Zek coughed, and his eyes opened again. Father, stop yelling. I'm still here. Minho laughed and cried at the same time. He gathered the small Velkari carefully into his arms, while Unji continued treatment. The battle was over. New Haven stood. But as Minho looked at his 6 cubs, all wounded, all exhausted, all victorious, he knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had just learned what happened when you threw away children that humans decided to keep. The news spread across human space faster than any military broadcast. Someone had recorded the battle at New Haven, and the footage went viral. 6 small Velkari, trained by a single human, had defeated 30 elite Imperial warriors. The impossible had happened, and everyone wanted to know how. Minho sat by Zek's bedside in the rebuilt medical center. The small Velkari was recovering well, though Unji said it would be weeks before he was fully healed. The other cubs visited constantly, never leaving their brother alone for long. A ship landed at the colony on the 5th day after the battle. Captain Do-hyun stepped out, followed by several officials in military uniforms. Minho met them in the colony square, with Kira and Rax standing protectively beside him. Minho, Do-hyun said formally. We need to talk. They gathered in Gina's house. The officials spread out data displays, showing intelligence reports from deep inside Velkari space. The Empire is in chaos, Do-hyun explained. News of your victory has reached their core worlds. Do you know what's happening? Velkari who were marked as defective are refusing termination. Some are escaping, some are hiding. The Empire's genetic purity laws are being questioned for the first time in their history. Good, Minho said simply. It's more than good, it's revolutionary. Do-hyun pulled up more reports. We've identified at least 50 locations where defective Velkari cubs are being held for termination. The Empire is scrambling to eliminate them before more escape. They can't let your cubs become a symbol of rebellion. Kira leaned forward. How many cubs? Best estimate? Over 300 across all facilities. The room went silent. 300 cubs, all scheduled to die simply because they weren't born perfect. All facing the same fate. Kira and her siblings had escaped 3 years ago. One of the officials, a stern woman named Admiral Soyeon, spoke up. The Human Coalition wants to form a special operations unit. Small, fast, capable of operating behind enemy lines. Our goal is to rescue these cubs before they're killed. And you want us, Minho said, already knowing the answer. We want you to lead it. And we want your 6 cubs as the founding members of what we're calling Pride Unit. They've proven they can fight against superior numbers. More importantly, they've proven that defective Velkari, properly trained, can be extraordinary warriors. Minho looked at Kira and Rax. The decision wasn't his alone. What happens to the cubs we rescue? Kira asked. Admiral Soyeon's expression softened. That depends. Some might want to stay with the coalition. Some might want to return to their own people once the Empire changes. Some might just want a peaceful life. But all of them will have a choice, which is more than the Empire gives them. Father? Rax looked at Minho. What do you think? I think, Minho said carefully, that 3 years ago, I made a choice to save 6 cubs who were scheduled to die. If I could do it again, I would. The question is, can you 5 do it? This won't be easy. It'll be dangerous. Some missions might fail. We might not save everyone. Tali entered the room then, having been listening from the doorway. We were helpless once. Someone helped us anyway. Now it's our turn. Ven nodded silently. Sora checked her weapons with a determined expression. Even Zek, still recovering, spoke up through the communication link from the medical center. I'm running calculations. His voice crackled through. 300 cubs across 50 facilities. If we plan perfectly and move fast, we can save at least 60%, maybe more. Once I'm the Warias, I fan South H Warias. That's still 120 cubs dead, one of the officials pointed out. Which means 180 saved, Zek replied. Better than 0, Admiral Soyeon smiled. Is that a yes? Minho looked at each of his cubs. They had grown so much from the scared, hissing creatures in that research facility. They had become warriors, yes, but more than that. They had become people who understood what it meant to protect the weak. One condition, Minho said. Every cub we rescue gets the same choice we give our 6. They can fight with us if they want, but they can also choose peace. No forced conscription. Thank you for watching, and discover more. No using them as weapons. They get to decide their own future. Agreed, Admiral Soyeon said without hesitation. When can you start? As soon as Zek is healed. We don't leave family behind. 3 weeks later, a ship left New Haven's orbit. It was military-grade but unmarked, fast enough to outrun most pursuers, and armed enough to fight when needed. The name painted on its hull was simple: Pride. In the cargo hold were 30 modified cryopods, each one equipped with life support and medical monitoring. They were empty now, but they wouldn't be for long. Minho stood in the command center with his 6 cubs around him. Kira was studying tactical maps. Rax was checking weapons systems. Tali was practically bouncing with excited energy. Ven was silent as always, already preparing for the stealth work he did best. Sora was calibrating her rifle. And Zek, still moving a bit slowly but recovering well, was coordinating with military intelligence to identify the first target. The facility on Vorith Prime, Zek announced. 28 cubs scheduled for termination in 4 days. Security is lighter than other locations. It's our best first mission. Zek in time. Zek in time. Zek in time. Can we reach it in time? Minho asked. If we push the engines? Yes, barely. Then we push the engines. Minho activated the ship-wide communication system. This is what we trained for. This is why we fought at New Haven. Out there are cubs who think nobody cares about them, that they're worthless because someone said they're defective. We're going to show them they're wrong. Reno. Lumen. He looked at his 6 cubs, his 6 children, who had become the finest warriors he'd ever known. We're going to give them what someone once gave us. A choice. A chance. A family. Kira placed her hand on the console. One by one, the others did the same. Even Zek, with his still healing arm. Minho placed his hand on top of theirs. Pride unit, Kira said. For the cubs who can't fight for themselves. For the cubs? The others echoed. The ship entered hyperspace, leaving New Haven behind. Ahead lay Valkyrie, space, danger, and 300 cubs who needed saving. A journalist named Hana, who had been embedded with them to document Pride Unit's formation, watched this moment and asked Minho a question. Do you ever regret it? Saving them 3 years ago? Your life would be simpler if you'd walked away. Minho looked at Kira, coordinating with her siblings. At Rax, laughing at one of Tali's jokes. At Ven, silently preparing equipment. At Sora and Zek, working together on mission planning. He saw 6 cubs who should have died but instead became heroes. Regret? Minho smiled. I regret it took me so long to find them. The Pride moved through space toward its first rescue mission. In a facility on Vorith Prime, 28 cubs waited, not knowing that help was coming. Not knowing that a human and 6 defective Valkyrie were about to change their lives forever. The Empire had thrown away its children. Humanity had picked them up, trained them, and loved them. Now those children were coming back. Not as victims. Not as defects. As warriors with a purpose. As a family with a mission. As pride. And they would save every cub they could reach, or die trying.